A flat tire. That's all it took to bring Lucas Blackwater face to face with the woman who still haunted his dreams 3 years later. Lucas's sleek black Mercedes hit a pothole on the industrial side of Detroit, and while his driver stepped out to assess the damage, Lucas found himself standing in front of a rundown diner called Rosie's, the kind of place that existed in a world he'd left behind long ago. The neon sign flickered weakly in the evening drizzle. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could see cracked vinyl booths and fluorescent lights that had seen better decades. Everything about the place screamed exhaustion and struggle. He needed coffee. But what he got was about to change everything. Lucas pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed overhead. The diner smelled like burnt coffee, grease, and lives lived paycheck to paycheck. A few truckers occupied the counter, nursing their own cups. An elderly couple shared fries in a corner booth. The TV played evening news that nobody was watching. "Seat yourself, honey," a tired voice called from the back. Lucas chose a booth near the window where he could monitor his car. He pulled out his phone, already scrolling through emails about the Toronto acquisition deal that needed his signature by Friday. His mind was a million miles away from this greasy diner in the worst part of Detroit, until he heard footsteps approaching and looked up. Time stopped. There, standing beside his booth with a coffee pot in one hand and a stained apron tied around her waist, was the woman he'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Tiffany, his ex-wife. She froze mid-step. Her golden kinky twists pulled back into a low ponytail, a few loose strands framing her face. The twists caught the fluorescent light, shimmering like spun gold despite the dingy surroundings. She wore minimal makeup, just a touch of eyeliner that made her dark brown eyes stand out even more against her deep brown skin. Those eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, dark circles underneath that spoke of too many shifts, too little sleep, too much survival. She'd lost weight. Her rich brown skin, which used to glow with health and happiness, now looked tired. Her hands, once soft and paint-stained from her artwork, were rough and reddened from hard labor. But even worn down by life, even standing there in a waitress uniform that had seen better days, Tiffany Campbell was still the most beautiful woman Lucas had ever seen. For a moment, neither of them moved. 3 years of silence. 3 years of carefully constructed walls. 3 years of pretending the other didn't exist in a city of 4 million people. And now here they were, separated by 3 feet and a lifetime of pain. "Lucas." Her voice came out barely above a whisper, shock written all over her face. "Tiffany." His voice came out colder than he intended. But 3 years of bitterness didn't disappear just because his heart had started pounding the second he saw her. They stared at each other, and Lucas felt something crack inside his chest, something he'd convinced himself was dead and buried. Even now, even after everything, the pull between them was undeniable. Magnetic. The same attraction that had drawn them together 7 years ago. Lucas found himself studying her without meaning to, and taking in every detail. The exhaustion etched into her features, the way her uniform hung a little too loose on her frame, the rough, chapped state of her hands. She looked worn down, tired, like life had been systematically breaking her piece by piece. A bitter part of him whispered that she deserved it, but he couldn't look away. He realized he'd been staring too long when Tiffany's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What the heck are you looking at?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Lucas blinked, genuinely startled. Nothing. Just what? Enjoying the view? Taking notes on how far I've fallen so you can go home and feel good about yourself?" Tiffany shifted the coffee pot to her other hand, her jaw clenched tight. "Well, congratulations, Lucas, you win. I work 2 jobs. I'm broke. I'm tired. Are you satisfied now?" "I didn't say anything. You didn't have to." She cut him off, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your face said it all. That smug look how right I was expression. I remember it well." Despite everything, despite the bitterness, despite the anger, despite the 3 years of trying to hate her, Lucas felt his lips twitch. There she was, that fire he'd fallen in love with. That quick temper that could go from 0 to fury in 2 seconds flat. He'd forgotten how alive she made him feel, even when she was yelling at him. "Coffee?" Tiffany asked, her tone making it abundantly clear she'd rather pour it on his head than in a cup. But that was one thing about Tiffany. She couldn't bring herself to be physical with people, no matter how angry she was. "Black," Lucas said, fighting to keep his voice neutral and professional. Tiffany was doing her own assessment while she poured, and she hated herself for it. Hated that despite everything, despite the exhaustion, despite the bitterness, despite 3 years of trying to forget him. Her treacherous heart still skipped when she looked at Lucas Blackwater. He looked like money now. That suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months. The watch on his wrist could pay her rent for a year. But it wasn't the wealth that made her breath catch. It was him. Lucas had always been gorgeous, but success had refined him into something almost devastating. His light brown skin seemed to glow with health and prosperity. His hair, a low, perfectly trimmed brownish afro with tight curls, was absolute perfection. A light goatee framed his full lips, giving him a sophistication that made her chest ache with memories of when those lips used to smile at her, when they used to kiss her. At 6'4", with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build that his tailored suit couldn't hide, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread titled "Billionaires Who Will Ruin Your Life." He looked like everything she'd lost, everything she'd been accused of throwing away. And the worst part? The absolute worst part was that her body still responded to him. Her pulse still quickened. Her skin still remembered what his hands felt like. 3 years of trying to forget, and one look at Lucas Blackwater undid all of it. She set the coffee cup down in front of him harder than necessary, making the liquid slosh slightly. "Anything else?" she asked flatly. Lucas leaned back in the booth, his large frame taking up most of the space. His dark brown eyes studied her face like he was trying to solve a complex equation that didn't add up. The silence stretched for a beat too long. The air between them crackled with tension. Anger, yes, but something else too. Something neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Then Lucas spoke, his voice deceptively casual. "So, how's Rocco doing these days?" The name landed like a bomb. Tiffany's entire body went rigid. Her grip on the coffee pot tightened until her knuckles went lighter against her brown skin. "Excuse me?" Her voice was deadly quiet. "Rocco," Lucas repeated, and now his voice wasn't casual at all. It was cold, sharp as broken glass. "The man you had an affair with. I'm assuming he's long gone, given your current circumstances." He gestured vaguely at the diner, and at her uniform, at the life she was living now. The implication was crystal clear. This is what you get for betraying me. This is what you deserve. For a moment, Tiffany just stared at him. Then she did something Lucas didn't expect. She laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It wasn't even an angry laugh. It was the kind of laugh that came from 3 years of surviving hell and realizing that the person who'd sent you there still had absolutely no clue what he'd done. "You know what, Lucas?" Tiffany set the coffee pot down with a decisive thunk and crossed her arms. "For a supposed genius, a man who built a multi-billion-dollar tech empire from nothing, you are actually, genuinely, spectacularly stupid." Lucas's jaw clenched, his hands flattening on the table. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Tiffany leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. "Stupid, dense, thick-headed. Would you like me to use smaller words so you can understand?" "Careful, Tiffany." "Careful?" She let out a harsh laugh. "Careful of what, Lucas? What exactly are you going to do to me that hasn't already been done? I've lost everything, my home, my reputation, My career as an art teacher. I worked 2 jobs just to afford a studio apartment with roaches the size of my thumb. So please, enlighten me. What exactly do I need to be careful about? You lost those things because of your own choices. Lucas's voice rose despite himself, frustration bleeding through his controlled exterior. I gave you everything, Tiffany, everything. A penthouse, security, a life most people only dream about. And you threw it all away for some smooth talking. I didn't do it. Each word was punctuated, deliberate, fierce enough to make Lucas's next words die in his throat. You never denied it, Lucas shot back, his control slipping. I showed you those photos, you in our bed with another man, and you just cried and apologized. You never once said you didn't sleep with him. Oh, I'm sorry. Tiffany's voice dripped with sarcasm so thick you could cut it. I'm so sorry that waking up confused, with a splitting headache, missing hours of my memory, half-dressed in bed with a stranger I'd met once, while my husband, the man I loved more than my own life, looked at me like I was garbage, didn't give me the mental clarity to mount a proper defense in that exact moment. The entire diner had gone completely silent. The cook was fully out of the kitchen now, arms crossed, watching. The elderly woman was nodding along like Tiffany was preaching gospel. Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it. He hadn't thought about it like that. Hadn't considered what she must have felt waking up to that nightmare. No. He couldn't start second-guessing himself now. He had evidence. Photos from multiple angles. Messages. Witnesses. The texts, Tiffany, Lucas said, his voice quieter now but no less firm. I saw the text messages between you and him. Weeks of messages. I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing. When can I see you again? How do you explain those? I can't, Tiffany admitted, and for a split second, Lucas felt a flash of vindication. Because I never sent them. The vindication died. That's convenient, Lucas started, but Tiffany cut him off. Those first few hours after you showed me those photos? Her voice was steady now. Certain. I genuinely thought maybe I'd done something terrible. The hangover was brutal, worst I'd ever had. I couldn't remember anything from the night before. The photo was right there, damning as hell. I thought maybe I'd gotten drunk at that charity gala and made the worst mistake of my life. She straightened up, her golden kinky twists catching the light, making her look like some kind of warrior queen despite the stained apron. But then you showed me those texts, and I checked my phone, Lucas. Every single message was gone. Deleted. Not in my trash folder. Not in my sent messages. Just gone. Her dark brown eyes bored into his. And those hotel testimonies you kept throwing in my face? The building security guard who swore he saw me there multiple times? The neighbor in 4B who reported seeing Rocco leave our penthouse at midnight? She leaned in closer, and Lucas caught a whiff of her scent. Coffee and something uniquely Tiffany that made his chest tighten. That's when I knew, she said softly. Someone went through a lot of trouble to destroy my marriage. Set up fake testimonies, doctored evidence, planted a man in my bed while I was unconscious. And they succeeded, Lucas. They succeeded because you were so ready, so eager to believe the worst of me that you didn't even question it. Lucas felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's ridiculous. You're saying someone orchestrated an entire conspiracy. I'm not saying anything, Tiffany interrupted, straightening up and grabbing the coffee pot again. I spent months begging you to investigate, to question the evidence, to just listen to me. I'm done begging, I'm done explaining, and I'm done caring what Lucas Blackwater thinks of me. She turned to walk away, but Lucas's voice stopped her. If you were so innocent, why didn't you fight harder? The question came out more desperate than he intended. Why did you just give up? Send me divorce papers and disappear? Tiffany turned back slowly, and the look on her face made Lucas's heart clench. "Because you'd already decided I was guilty," she said simply. "And nothing I could say would change your mind. You looked at me like I was a stranger, like 7 years meant nothing. Like the woman who believed in you when you were coding in a cramped apartment, eating ramen for dinner, betting everything on a dream. Like she never existed." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and Lucas saw her swallow hard. "So yeah, Lucas, I gave up. I gave up trying to prove myself to a man who'd already written the ending to our story without bothering to ask me for my side." She blinked rapidly, refusing to let tears fall. "Enjoy your coffee." This time when she turned to leave, Lucas didn't stop her. He sat there in the booth, staring at the black coffee he hadn't touched, his mind spinning in circles. The elderly woman in the corner was glaring at him like he'd kicked a puppy. One of the truckers shook his head in disgust and muttered something that sounded like, "Rich folks don't know what they got till it's gone." Lucas felt heat crawling up his neck. "Someone went through a lot of trouble to destroy my marriage. You were so eager to believe the worst of me. You'd already decided I was guilty." The words echoed in his head, refusing to be silenced. His driver knocked on the window, giving him a thumbs up. The tire was fixed. Time to go. Lucas stood up, his mind still spinning with Tiffany's words. He pulled out his wallet and left a crisp $100 bill on the table for a $5 cup of coffee he'd never touched. He needed to leave. Needed to get back to his car, back to his life, back to the carefully constructed world where Tiffany Campbell didn't exist, and he didn't have to think about the look in her eyes when she said, "You'd already decided I was guilty." He was almost at the door, hand reaching for the handle, when he heard it. "Hey, yeah, you forgot your change." Lucas turned. Tiffany was standing there, holding the $100 bill, her golden kinky twists slightly disheveled from the confrontation, her dark brown eyes still blazing with that fire that made his chest tighten. "Keep it," Lucas said, the words coming out before he could think them through. "It's a tip. You look like you need it." The moment the words left his mouth, he knew he'd made a mistake. Tiffany's eyes went wide, not with gratitude, but with fury so pure and incandescent that Lucas actually took a step back. "I look like I need it?" she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "I didn't mean—" Lucas started, already trying to backtrack, to apologize. But Tiffany was already moving. She closed the distance between them in 3 long strides, and before Lucas could process what was happening, so she'd grabbed his suit jacket and shoved the $100 bill into his inner pocket with enough force that he stumbled slightly. But she wasn't done. Her hand dove back into his pocket, and pulled out his wallet with sharp, angry movements. She yanked out a $5 bill, shoved his wallet back into his pocket so hard he felt it against his ribs, then crumpled the 5 in her fist. "Coffee is $5, she said through gritted teeth, her face inches from his. "This is what I'm owed for services rendered. This is what I'll take." She shoved the 5 into her apron pocket with deliberate precision, her dark brown eyes locked on his. "I don't need your pity, Lucas," she hissed. "I don't need your guilt money. I don't need your condescending tips from some billionaire who thinks throwing cash at people solves everything. What I need is for you to take your money, your assumptions, your colossal arrogance, and stay the hell out of my life." The diner had gone silent again. Every single person was watching them like this was better than any TV show. Lucas stood there, frozen, acutely aware that this woman, his ex-wife, the woman he'd convinced himself had betrayed him, had just basically pickpocketed him to make a point. And she was magnificent. Tiffany stepped back, breathing hard, her chest heaving with emotion. Rain was starting to fall harder outside, and the sound of it hitting the diner's roof filled the silence between them. "Stay out of my life," she said one more time, quieter now but no less fierce. Then she turned and walked away, her spine straight, her head held high, leaving Lucas standing there with his mouth slightly open and his entire worldview cracking like thin ice. The elderly woman in the corner booth started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder. One of the truckers joined in, then another. Within seconds, half the diner was applauding Tiffany like she'd just delivered the performance of a lifetime. Lucas felt his face burning with humiliation as he pushed through the door and into the rain. If you think Lucas just got exactly what he deserved, drop a comment saying, "You go, Tiffany," and hit that subscribe button. Because what happens when Lucas gets home is going to make you wonder who you can really trust. His driver was waiting by the car, holding an umbrella. "Sir, are you all right? You look—" "I'm fine," Lucas said curtly, climbing into the back seat. "Let's go." But as they pulled away from Rosie's diner, Lucas found himself looking back through the rain-streaked window. He could see Tiffany through the glass, back at work already, taking an order from a trucker. Her spine was straight, her chin up, professional despite everything that had just happened. As he watched, she said something that made the trucker laugh. And even from here, Lucas could see the exhaustion in the slight slump of her shoulders when she thought no one was looking. She worked 2 jobs. The realization hit him like a freight train. She wasn't just waitressing at Rosie's. That meant she was going to another job after this one. He checked his watch. 7 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. How many hours was she working? There were bags under her eyes. How little was she sleeping? How long had she been living like this? Someone went through a lot of trouble to destroy my marriage. The words wouldn't leave his head. They circled around and around, refusing to be silenced. What if? No. He had evidence. Photos, messages, witnesses. But what if? Lucas shook his head, trying to clear it. He was letting her get in his head. That's what Tiffany did. She was persuasive, passionate, convincing. That's probably how she'd managed the affair in the first place. Except, she hadn't looked guilty. She'd looked furious, righteous, certain. And she'd called him stupid. Despite everything, Lucas felt his lips curve into the smallest smile at the memory. For nobody talked to him like that anymore. Nobody dared. He was Lucas Blackwater, Billionaire CEO. People agreed with him, deferred to him, praised him. But Tiffany had looked him dead in the eye and called him spectacularly stupid. The smile faded as quickly as it had come. Because if she was right, if someone really had set her up, then he was indeed stupid. Monumentally, catastrophically stupid. And he destroyed an innocent woman's life. The thought made his stomach turn. "We're here, sir," his driver announced, pulling up to Lucas's building, a sleek glass tower in downtown Detroit. Lucas climbed out, nodded his thanks, and headed toward the private elevator that would take him to his penthouse on the top floor. His mind was still spinning with Tiffany's words, with the look in her eyes, and with the doubt that had started creeping in like poison. The elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse foyer, and Lucas stepped out, already loosening his tie, and froze. Music was playing, something soft and jazzy that he definitely hadn't left on. And there was a smell, garlic and herbs, like someone was cooking. "Hello," Lucas called out, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone. "Lucas, you're home." A woman appeared from the direction of the kitchen, and Lucas felt his shoulders relax slightly, even as something uncomfortable settled in his stomach. Shantel, Tiffany's former best friend, or cousin. Lucas could never quite remember which. They'd been so close growing up that the distinction seemed irrelevant. Shantel was stunning, as always. Her smooth, dark brown skin seemed to glow even under the penthouse's ambient lighting. She wore her natural hair in a short, tapered cut that emphasized her elegant neck and high cheekbones. At 5'9" with curves in all the right places, she moved with the kind of confidence that turned heads everywhere she went. Today, she was wearing fitted jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than Tiffany made in a month at that diner. Diamond earrings sparkled against her dark skin, and her full lips curved into a warm smile when she saw him. "I hope you don't mind," Shantel said, gesturing back toward the kitchen. "I let myself in. Security knows me, obviously. I thought you might like a home-cooked meal for once instead of that takeout you've been living on. Lucas set his briefcase down, trying to process this. Chantelle, how did you even know I'd be home? I wasn't planning. I have my ways, she said with a playful wink, moving closer to him. Plus, I was worried about you. You've been working so hard lately. The Toronto deal, the expansion into Asia. Someone needs to make sure you're taking care of yourself. She reached up and straightened his tie, the tie he'd just been loosening. And Lucas found himself taking a small step back. I'm fine, he said, his voice coming out a bit too sharp. You really didn't need to. I wanted to, Shantel interrupted, her hand lingering on his chest for just a moment too long before she stepped back. That's what friends do, right? We take care of each other. Friends. Right. Except Shantel had been doing this more and more lately. Showing up unannounced, cooking for him, organizing his closet, redecorating parts of his penthouse to make it feel more like a home. After the divorce, her presence had been comforting. She'd been there through the worst of it, listening to him rage about Tiffany's betrayal, validating his anger, supporting his decision to cut his ex-wife out of his life completely. She'd told him everything. About how she'd tried to warn Tiffany that Rocco was bad news. About how she'd seen the text messages on Tiffany's phone and confronted her. About how Tiffany had laughed it off, said Lucas was never around anyway, said she deserved some fun. Shantel had been the one to call him that night. Crying. Saying she'd tried to stop Tiffany from bringing Rocco home, but Tiffany wouldn't listen. She'd been his witness. His proof that he wasn't crazy, that he hadn't imagined the betrayal. So why did he suddenly feel uncomfortable having her in his space? Dinner's almost ready, Shantel said brightly, heading back toward the kitchen. I made your favorite, jerk chicken with rice and peas, and I picked up that wine you like from the place in Midtown. She moved through his kitchen like she owned it, opening cabinets without hesitation, knowing exactly where everything was, humming along to the music. Lucas followed slowly, watching her. Really watching her for the first time in a while. When had she started keeping clothes here? There was a sweater draped over one of his bar stools that was definitely feminine. And were those her shoes by the door? Chantelle, Lucas said carefully. How often have you been coming by? She turned from the stove, wooden spoon in hand, and smiled. Oh, you know, a few times a week. I like to make sure the place stays clean. Your housekeeper is fine, but she doesn't really know you, you know? She doesn't know that you like your books organized by author, or that you prefer your coffee beans in the freezer, or that you can't stand it when the throw pillows aren't arranged properly. Lucas felt something cold creep down his spine. He had mentioned those things, but months ago. And Chantelle had remembered, had been implementing them, had been making herself indispensable. That's thoughtful, Lucas said slowly. But you really don't need to. I want to, Chantelle said again, more firmly this time. She set down the spoon and moved toward him, her dark eyes intense. Lucas, you've been alone for 3 years, working yourself to death, refusing to date, refusing to move on. Someone needs to look out for you. She reached up and touched his face, her hand warm against his cheek. Let me take care of you, she said softly. You deserve someone who actually appreciates you, who sees how incredible you are, who won't throw away everything you've built for some... She trailed off, but Lucas could fill in the blank. For some cheap affair. Lucas gently removed her hand from his face. Chantelle, I appreciate the thought, but you saw her today, didn't you? Chantelle's voice changed, sharpened. That's why you're acting weird. You saw Tiffany. Lucas's head snapped up. How did you... Your driver mentioned you stopped at a diner on the east side, Chantelle said, crossing her arms. There's only one reason you'd go to that part of town. So, how is she? I'm still playing the victim? There was something in Chantelle's voice, an edge, a bitterness, that Lucas had never noticed before. Or maybe he had noticed and just ignored it. "She's working," Lucas said carefully, watching Chantel's reaction. "2 jobs, it looks like." "Good," Shantel said, and the venom in that single word made Lucas's eyebrows raise. "She deserves to struggle after what she did to you, after she threw away the best thing that ever happened to her." Shantel moved closer again, and this time there was something predatory in her movements. "You gave her everything, Lucas, everything. And she cheated on you in your own bed. She deserves whatever life she's living now." Lucas thought about Tiffany's rough hands, her exhausted eyes, the way she'd looked at him with such fierce pride despite being worn down to nothing. I didn't do it. Someone went through a lot of trouble to destroy my marriage." "She said she was set up," Lucas heard himself say. Chantel went very still. "What?" "Tiffany. She said someone orchestrated the whole thing, the photos, the texts, the witnesses. She said it was all fake." Chantel laughed, but it sounded forced. "Of course she did. What else would she say? She's not going to admit she cheated Lucas. She's going to make up some conspiracy theory to make herself look innocent." "She seemed pretty certain," Lucas said, still watching Chantel carefully. "She's a liar," Chantel said flatly. "She lied to you for weeks, maybe months. She lied when you confronted her. She's lying now. Don't let her get in your head." Chantel grabbed his hands, her grip tight, almost desperate. "I was there, Lucas, remember? I saw everything. I tried to stop her. I called you because I couldn't stand watching her destroy you." Her dark eyes were intense, pleading. "Don't let her rewrite history just because she's suffering the consequences of her own actions." Lucas looked down at their joined hands. Chantel's were soft, manicured, decorated with expensive rings. He thought about Tiffany's hands, rough, chapped, the hands of someone who worked until they bled. "Right," Lucas said slowly, gently extracting his hands from Chantel's grip. "Of course." But doubt had taken root in his mind, and it was growing. Because Chantel had been very quick to defend herself just now. Very insistent that Tiffany was lying, and she'd made herself very comfortable in his home. Almost like she'd been waiting for an opportunity, and almost like she'd been positioning herself to take Tiffany's place. "I'm actually not that hungry," Lucas said abruptly. "I have some work to catch up on. You should probably—" "I'll wait," Chantel said brightly, the moment of intensity gone as quickly as it had appeared. "I'll just keep dinner warm. You work, and when you're ready we can eat together. Like always." Like always. When had that become always? Lucas nodded slowly and headed toward his study, feeling Chantel's eyes on him the entire way. Once inside, he closed the door and leaned against it, his mind racing. Something felt wrong. Off. Like he was finally seeing a picture that had been in front of him all along, but he'd been too blind to notice. Chantel had been there through everything. The confrontation, the divorce, the aftermath. She'd been the one to call him that night. She'd been the one to show him the texts. She'd been the one to confirm all his worst fears about Tiffany. And now she was in his home, cooking his favorite meals, touching his face, talking about taking care of him. "Someone went through a lot of trouble to destroy my marriage." Lucas moved to his desk and opened his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. Then he typed, "How to tell if digital evidence has been tampered with." He didn't know what he was looking for, didn't even know if he'd find anything. But Tiffany's words wouldn't leave his head. And Chantel's reaction just now, that flash of panic when he'd mentioned Tiffany claiming she was set up, had been telling. Lucas had built his empire on data, on patterns, on seeing what others missed. And he was starting to see a pattern here that made his blood run cold. Through his study door, he could hear Chantel humming in the kitchen, making herself at home, acting like she belonged there, acting like she'd won something. Lucas pulled up his old files from the divorce. the evidence his investigator had provided, the photos, the timeline. And for the first time in 3 years, he started looking at it all with fresh eyes. Not as a heartbroken husband who'd been betrayed, but as an investigator looking for the truth, whatever that truth might be. Shantel is in Lucas's house acting like she owns the place, cooking his favorite meals, and getting defensive when he mentions Tiffany. If you think something is seriously wrong with this picture, drop a comment saying Shantel is suspicious and smash that subscribe button. Because we're going back 3 years to investigate ourselves, let's figure out together what really happened. 3 years earlier, the Blackwater penthouse in downtown Detroit was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Detroit River, marble floors that echoed with every footstep, and enough square footage to house 3 families comfortably. But tonight, like most nights lately, it felt less like a home and more like a beautifully decorated prison. Tiffany Blackwater stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker against the darkness, her reflection staring back at her like a ghost. Her golden, kinky twists cascaded down her back in thick, beautiful ropes, freshly done just yesterday. Her silk robe, a gift from Lucas for their 5th anniversary, clung to her frame. Expensive and soft and utterly useless at keeping her warm, because the cold she felt wasn't physical. It was the cold of an empty bed, an empty penthouse, an empty marriage. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and Tiffany's heart leaped with desperate hope as she rushed to grab it. Lucas, deal running late, won't make dinner. Sorry, love you. Tiffany stared at the message for a long moment, then set the phone down carefully, deliberately, like if she moved too fast she might shatter. This was the 3rd dinner he'd canceled this week, the 7th this month. She looked at the dining table she'd set so carefully, candles lit, his favorite meal keeping warm in the oven, a bottle of wine she'd spent an hour selecting because she wanted everything to be perfect for when he came home. Except he wasn't coming home. Again. Tiffany blew out the candles one by one, watching the smoke curl up toward the ceiling, and told herself she wasn't going to cry. She was so tired of crying. Girl, you need to stop moping and start living. Shantel breezed into the penthouse like she owned the place, which, in a way, she kind of did these days. With a chain of fashion shops that fetched her thousands of dollars every week, Tiffany could easily afford her own house anywhere she wanted. But she'd been staying in the guest suite for the past month, ever since Tiffany had mentioned how lonely the place felt with Lucas gone. That was how much she loved her. Or at least, that was what Shantel made Tiffany believe. I'm not moping, Tiffany said, though she was absolutely moping. I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? For Lucas to remember he has a wife? Shantel dropped her designer purse on the counter and moved to the kitchen, pulling out the wine Tiffany had been saving. Honey, I love you, but you need to face reality. That man is married to his company, not to you. That's not fair, Tiffany said, but her voice lacked conviction. He's working hard to build something, for us, for our future. What future? Shantel poured 2 generous glasses of wine and handed one to Tiffany. The future where you're 60 years old and still eating dinner alone while he closes deals in Singapore? Tiffany took the wine, but didn't drink it. He promised things would slow down after this Tokyo expansion. Just a few more months and... He said that 6 months ago, Shantel interrupted gently. And 6 months before that. And 6 months before that. She sat down on the couch and patted the spot next to her. Tiff, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm trying to be honest. Because I love you and I can't stand watching you waste away in this gorgeous prison. Tiffany sank onto the couch beside her cousin. Though they'd been raised more like sisters, their mothers being twins who'd done everything together, including raising their daughters as a unit. Shantel was the closest thing to a sibling Tiffany had ever known. I just miss him, Tiffany whispered. I miss who we used to be, when we were broke and struggling and happy, when he used to look at me like I was his whole world. Chantel's hand found hers, squeezing gently. I know, honey. I know. What Tiffany didn't see, couldn't see, was the way Chantel's eyes flickered with something cold and calculating before softening back into sympathy. Because Chantel remembered those days too. The days when Lucas was broke, when he was nobody. She remembered the night she'd introduced Lucas to Tiffany at that cramped coffee shop in Midtown. She'd met him first, actually. Had flirted with him at a tech networking event, had given him her number, had been planning to call him back. But then Tiffany had walked into that coffee shop, all bright smiles and golden twists and infectious laughter, and Lucas had looked at her like the sun had just risen. He'd never looked at Chantel like that. Nobody had ever looked at Chantel like that. She was beautiful, sophisticated. She turned heads and broke hearts. But somehow, whenever Tiffany was in the room, Chantel became invisible. It had been that way their whole lives. Teachers praising Tiffany's artwork while Chantel's sat unnoticed. Boys asking for Tiffany's number while Chantel stood right there. Scholarships and opportunities falling into Tiffany's lap while Chantel had to fight for every scrap. And now Tiffany had Lucas. Lucas, who'd built a $6 billion empire. Lucas, who could give a woman anything she wanted. Lucas, who should have been Chantel's, would have been Chantel's, if Tiffany hadn't stolen him. You know what you need? Chantel said brightly, pushing down the bitterness that constantly threatened to surface. A night out. The charity gala is this weekend, the one you've been planning for months. You're going to put on your most stunning dress. We're going to drink expensive champagne, and you're going to remember that you're Tiffany Blackwater, and you're fabulous. Tiffany managed a small smile. I don't really feel like celebrating. Who said anything about celebrating? This is about showing the world that you're more than Lucas Blackwater's lonely wife. You're an artist, a philanthropist, a force. Chantel grinned. Besides, I have a friend I want you to meet. He's in town for a few weeks, and I think you'd really enjoy talking to him. A friend? Tiffany raised an eyebrow. Chantel, I'm married. Relax, girl. He's just a friend. His name's Rocco. We worked together years ago on a marketing campaign. He's charming, he's funny, and he's excellent at making women feel appreciated. Chantel squeezed Tiffany's hand again. Not like that. Just, you could use someone who sees you, you know? Someone who pays attention. Tiffany should have said no, should have recognized the warning signs. But she was so lonely, so starved for attention, so desperate to feel like someone saw her. Fine, she said finally. One night out. But I'm not. I know. You're a devoted wife who would never stray. Chantel smiled, and this time the coldness in her eyes was almost visible. Trust me, Tiff. I know exactly who you are. If you're already getting bad vibes from Chantel and you want to warn Tiffany, drop a comment saying, "Don't trust her, Tiffany," and hit that subscribe button. Because what happens at this gala is going to change everything, and you won't want to miss a second. The charity gala was held at the historic Fisher Building, one of Detroit's architectural gems. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, champagne flowed like water, and Detroit's elite mingled in their designer gowns and custom tuxedos. Tiffany moved through the crowd with practiced grace, stunning in an emerald green dress that hugged her curves and made her dark brown skin glow. Her golden kinky twists were styled elegantly, cascading over one shoulder, and her light makeup, just a touch of eyeliner and lip gloss, made her look effortlessly beautiful. She smiled at donors, thanked sponsors, posed for photos, played the role of the perfect billionaire's wife even though her husband was 7,000 miles away in Tokyo, probably not even thinking about her. You look miserable, Chantel murmured, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. I look fine, Tiffany said automatically. You look like a woman who's smiling so hard her face hurts. Chantel pressed a glass into her hand. Drink, relax, and come meet Rocco. He's been dying to meet the famous Tiffany Blackwater. Before Tiffany could protest, Shantel was steering her across the ballroom toward a man standing near the bar. And Tiffany had to admit, objectively speaking, that Rocco Bellini was attractive. He stood about 6 feet tall with an athletic build that his tuxedo showed off perfectly. His caramel-toned skin seemed to glow under the ballroom lights, and he had warm hazel eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wore his hair in a neat fade with perfectly lined edges, and a carefully groomed goatee emphasized his strong jawline. Tiffany. "This is Rocco," Shantel said brightly. "Rocco, this is my cousin, basically my sister, Tiffany." Rocco extended his hand with a smile that was probably meant to be charming. "It's an honor, Mrs. Blackwater. Shantel talks about you constantly." Tiffany shook his hand politely, noting that his grip was a bit too firm, his eye contact a bit too intense. "It's nice to meet you, Rocco. How do you and Shantel know each other?" "We worked together years ago," Rocco said smoothly. "Marketing campaign for a hotel chain. Shantel was the creative genius. I was the pretty face." He said it with a self-deprecating laugh that was clearly designed to seem humble. Tiffany's instincts prickled slightly. Something about this man felt off, rehearsed. But Shantel was beaming like she just presented Tiffany with the perfect gift. And Tiffany didn't want to be rude. "Well, any friend of Shantel's is a friend of mine," Tiffany said, the words coming out automatically. "Are you enjoying the gala?" They chatted for a few minutes. Pleasant, forgettable small talk about the venue, the music, the charity they were supporting. Rocco was smooth, charming, and completely focused on Tiffany in a way that felt almost overwhelming. Every time she said something, he laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Every time she shifted, his body turned toward her like a flower following the sun. He touched her arm when making points, let his hand linger on her lower back when a waiter squeezed past. It was subtle, calculated, professional, because Rocco Bellini was, in fact, a professional. Not a marketing consultant, but an actor, a struggling one who'd do almost anything for the right price. And Shantel was paying him very, very well. "You seem tense," Rocco observed after about 20 minutes of conversation, his voice pitched low and intimate. "Can I get you another drink?" Tiffany looked down and realized her champagne glass was empty. Had she already drunk the whole thing? She couldn't remember. "I'm fine," she said, though her head was starting to feel a bit fuzzy. "Actually, I should probably circulate. There are donors I need to thank." "One more drink," Shantel interrupted, appearing with another glass of champagne. "You've been working this room for 2 hours, Tiff. Take a break. Chat with Rocco. He's not going to bite." She pressed the glass into Tiffany's hand with a warm smile. And Tiffany, tired, lonely, and genuinely enjoying having someone pay attention to her for once, accepted it. She didn't notice Chantel's thumb brush against the rim of the glass. She didn't notice the slight cloudiness in the champagne. She didn't notice Shantel and Rocco exchange a brief, triumphant glance over her head. Tiffany just drank. The next 30 minutes became a blur. Something was wrong. Tiffany knew something was wrong, but she couldn't quite grasp what. The room felt too warm. The lights were too bright. Her skin felt hypersensitive, tingling everywhere, like every nerve ending had been set on fire. And Rocco looked different now, more attractive, more compelling. Every time he smiled at her, warmth spread through her chest. Every time his hand brushed her arm, electricity shot through her veins. This isn't right. Some distant part of her brain screamed, "You don't know this man. You love Lucas. Something is very, very wrong." But her body wasn't listening to her brain anymore. "Are you okay?" Rocco asked, his face swimming in and out of focus. "You look flushed." "I don't—" Tiffany tried to form words, but her tongue felt thick and clumsy. "Something's wrong. I need to sit down." "Here, let me help you." Rocco's arm wrapped around her waist, and Tiffany leaned into him without meaning to. His touch felt like fire, like electricity, like something she desperately needed, even though she knew she shouldn't want it. "Shantel?" Tiffany mumbled, searching for her cousin through the increasingly blurry crowd. "Where's Shantel? I'm right here, honey." Shantel appeared at her other side, her voice dripping with concern. "You don't look good. Let's get you some air." They steered her toward the exit, past the curious glances of party guests, through the grand doors and into the hallway. Tiffany's memories became fragmented after that. Flashes of sensation without context, the cold night air on her face, Rocco's cologne overwhelming and intoxicating, being lowered into the back seat of a car. Their eyes met, and then Rocco's lips on hers. Tiffany kissed him back. She kissed him back because her body was on fire and her brain had stopped working and everything felt foggy and dreamlike and not quite real. Some part of her knew this was wrong, knew she would hate herself for this, knew that this wasn't who she was. But she couldn't stop. She didn't want to stop. Whatever Shantel had put in that champagne had made sure of that. When in a hotel room across town, not the penthouse, but a standard room Shantel had booked under a fake name. Shantel sat on the bed and watched Rocco pace nervously. "Are you sure this is going to work?" he asked, running his hands through his perfectly faded hair. "Because this feels really messed up, Shantel." "Cold feet?" Shantel's voice was sharp. "Now? After I've already paid you $5,000? "That was before I realized she was actually nice," Rocco said, gesturing vaguely. "She's not what you described. She's not some stuck-up rich witch who stole your man. She's just a lonely woman who misses her husband." Shantel stood up, and the look in her eyes made Rocco take a step back. "Let me tell you something about Tiffany," Shantel said, her voice low and dangerous. "She's been stealing from me our entire lives. Every opportunity, every achievement, every man who ever looked at me twice. She took them all. Without even trying, without even noticing. She just exists, and people fall at her feet." She moved closer to Rocco, her dark eyes burning with years of suppressed rage. "I introduced her to Lucas. He was supposed to be mine. I saw him first. I talked to him first. I gave him my number first. And then Tiffany walked in with her golden twists and her bright smile, and he looked at her like I didn't exist." Chantel's voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, just a moment, she looked less like a villain and more like a wounded child. "Do you know what it's like to always be second best? To watch someone take everything that should have been yours without even trying? To smile and pretend you're happy while you're dying inside?" Rocco was silent, his discomfort palpable. "Lucas should have been mine," Shantel whispered. "This life should have been mine. And I'm not going to let Tiffany keep it anymore. Not when she doesn't even appreciate what she has. Complaining my friggin' ears off every single time. I've had enough." She straightened up, the vulnerability disappearing behind a mask of cold determination. "Now, are you going to help me, or do I need to remind you about those gambling debts you owe to some very unpleasant people?" Rocco swallowed hard. "What do you need me to do?" "You already did the hard part," Shantel said, a satisfied smile spreading across her face. "You kissed her. She kissed you back. The rest is just odd presentation." "What does that mean?" "It means we're taking her back to the penthouse. You're going to lie next to her in her bed, fully clothed, nothing more, while I take some photos. Photos that will look like the aftermath of something much more intimate." Shantel pulled out her phone. "Then you're going to leave. I'm going to call Lucas in Tokyo, and the rest will take care of itself." "And what about her? What happens when she wakes up and tells Lucas she only kissed me?" "She won't remember the kiss clearly. Trust me. What I gave her creates gaps in memory, confusion. She'll wake up with flashes of being with you, but the details will be foggy. Chantel's smile widened. And when she sees those photos, when she sees herself in bed with a man she barely knows, she's going to assume the worst. She's going to believe she went all the way with you. Rocco stared at her with something that might have been horror. That's diabolical. That's justice. Shantel moved toward the door. Now come on, we have a marriage to destroy. The Blackwater penthouse was silent as Shantel and Rocco maneuvered Tiffany's barely conscious body through the door. Master bedroom's that way, Shantel directed, her voice all business now. Be careful, don't leave any marks, nothing that could be questioned later. They laid Tiffany on the bed she shared with Lucas, the bed that still smelled faintly of his cologne, the bed where she'd spent so many nights alone. Shantel worked quickly. She partially undressed Tiffany, not completely, just enough to be suggestive. Rumpled the sheets. Smeared Tiffany's makeup on Rocco slightly. Now you, Shantel said to Rocco. Lie next to her, close but not quite touching, like you just woke up. Rocco hesitated, looking down at Tiffany's face. Even in her drugged state, there were tears on her cheeks. Like some part of her knew what was happening. Like some part of her was fighting. She's crying, Rocco whispered. Lie down. Rocco complied, positioning himself next to Tiffany with the kind of intimate proximity that lovers shared. His face was close to hers, one arm extended toward her shoulder without quite touching. Shantel pulled out her phone and started snapping photos from multiple angles. The lighting was dim, romantic, damning. Move your hand a little closer to her face. Good. Now look at her like she means something to you. Perfect. She took at least 20 photos, reviewing each one with critical attention. When she was satisfied, she nodded at Rocco. Now get out. Use the service elevator. There won't be any cameras. And remember, if anyone asks, you've been seeing Tiffany for months. You met at an art gallery. You fell in love. She told you her marriage was over. And if I don't stick to the story, then I'll make sure your creditors know exactly where to find you. Shantel smiled sweetly. Don't worry, Rocco. You did your part. Now disappear. Rocco fled, relief evident in every step. Shantel stood alone in the penthouse, looking down at her cousin, her sister in all the ways that mattered, lying unconscious in the bed. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt? Regret? The faint echo of the girl who'd grown up sharing secrets and dreams with the woman lying before her? Then it was gone, replaced by cold resolve. I'm sorry, Tiff, Shantel whispered, but you have everything I ever wanted, and you don't even appreciate it. She pulled out her phone again, scrolled to Lucas's number. She took a deep breath, summoned tears to her eyes, and made the call. It was 3 a.m. in Tokyo. Lucas answered on the fourth ring, his voice groggy with sleep. Shantel, what's wrong? Is Tiffany? Lucas. Shantel let her voice break perfectly, the sound of a woman devastated by what she'd witnessed. Lucas, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. She brought him home. To your home, to your bed. Silence on the other end. Then, what are you talking about? Tiffany. Shantel let the tears flow now. Real tears, though they came from triumph, not grief. She's been seeing someone, Lucas, a man named Rocco. I've been trying to warn her for weeks, trying to get her to stop, but tonight she brought him to the penthouse. I came by to check on her and I found them. Stop! Lucas's voice was sharp, dangerous. What do you mean you found them? In your bedroom, Shantel sobbed. Together. I took photos because I knew you wouldn't believe me otherwise, and I'm so sorry, Lucas. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to be the one to tell you. Send them. What? The photos. Send them to me. Now. Chantel's finger hovered over the send button for just a moment. This was it. The point of no return. She pressed send. Silence stretched across the ocean, across the 7,000 miles between Detroit and Tokyo. Shantel could hear Lucas breathing, ragged, harsh breaths like a man being gutted alive. "I'll be on the next flight," Lucas said finally, his voice completely devoid of emotion in that way that meant he was feeling too much to process. "Don't let her leave. Don't let her know you called me." "Lucas, wait. There's more. I have text messages, between them, weeks worth. But please, I'm begging you, don't tell Tiffany I showed you. She'll hate me. She'll never forgive me for—" "Send them to me anonymously," Lucas said, his voice hard as stone. "I don't want her to know where I got them. Not yet." "Are you sure? I just—" "Send them, Shantel, and then forget we had this conversation." Shantel smiled in the darkness. "Of course, Lucas. Whatever you need." She hung up and looked down at Tiffany one more time. "Sweet dreams. Got a cousin," she whispered. "Tomorrow, your whole world burns down." Lucas's private jet landed in Detroit at 6 a.m. the next morning. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, had just stared at those photos on his phone, memorizing every detail, feeling his heart break into smaller and smaller pieces. His mind kept trying to find explanations. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Shantel was wrong about what she'd seen. Maybe the photos were misleading somehow. But then he'd look at them again. Tiffany, clearly asleep but in a state of undress. A man beside her, close enough to touch, with the kind of casual intimacy that spoke of familiarity, of history, of betrayal. And underneath the heartbreak, there was something else, something that had been festering for years. The voice that whispered he wasn't enough. Lucas had grown up poor. Really poor. The kind of poor where you went to bed hungry and wore shoes with holes and got laughed at by kids who had more. He'd clawed his way up from nothing, built an empire on intelligence and determination and the desperate need to prove he was worth something. But deep down, in the darkest parts of his heart, he'd always struggled with his self-worth. Apparently, the effect of years of being treated as a nobody hadn't been erased by his wealth. He'd wondered when Tiffany would realize she could do better. She was beautiful, talented, warm. She could have had anyone. Why would she stay with him? Especially now when he was never home, when he was always working, when he'd become so focused on building wealth that he'd forgotten to build their marriage. He couldn't stop. He wanted to make so much that he would never worry about being poor again. The photos confirmed his worst fears. She'd found someone else. Someone who was there. Someone who paid attention. Someone who wasn't constantly chasing the next deal. He'd been expecting it, but it didn't make the rage he felt less intense. By the time his driver pulled up to their building, Lucas was vibrating with a toxic mixture of rage, heartbreak, and self-loathing. The kind of emotional cocktail that made men do stupid things. He rode the elevator up to the penthouse in silence, walked through the foyer he'd once filled with flowers for Tiffany, past the kitchen where she used to dance while making breakfast, and pushed open the master bedroom door. Tiffany was awake. Barely. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands, clearly in the grip of a brutal headache. She was wearing only her underwear, the emerald dress from the gala crumpled on the floor nearby. Her golden kinky twists were tangled and messy, and her makeup was smeared across her face. She looked up when the door opened, and her eyes, those dark brown eyes he'd loved for 7 years, widened with shock and confusion. "Lucas?" Her voice was hoarse, scratchy. "What are you—" "I thought you were in Tokyo. How did you—" She stopped mid-sentence as fragments of memory slammed into her. Rocco's face, swimming in and out of focus. His cologne, overwhelming, his lips on hers, her kissing him back. The fog, the heat, the desperate, inexplicable wanting. Horror spread across Tiffany's face as the pieces clicked together. Partial pieces. Fragments without context. But enough. enough to make her feel sick. Lucas, she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh God, where is he? Lucas's voice was deadly quiet, each word precise, controlled. Where is the man you brought into my bed? She blinked up at him in confusion, turning to look at their bed with her brows furrowed. But there was no one. Just her, the rumpled sheets, and her clothes on the floor that she couldn't remember pulling off. What are you? He cut her off by shoving his phone in her face, the picture of her in another man's arms glaring back at her. She stared at it in horror. No, I didn't. It can't be. But you kissed him, a voice whispered in her head. How do you know you didn't bring him into your bed, into your room? I don't know. I don't remember. Tears started streaming down her face. Lucas, something happened last night. Something was wrong. I can't remember everything clearly. There was champagne, and then I felt strange, and then... She broke off, unable to continue, unable to face what she might have done. And then what? Lucas's voice cracked on the word. And then you brought him here? To our home? To our bed? I don't know. Tiffany was sobbing now, ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. I remember kissing him. I don't know why. I didn't want to. But I couldn't stop, and then everything gets foggy, and I woke up here and I don't know what happened, but I'm so sorry, Lucas. I'm so sorry. She stumbled toward him, reaching for him, but Lucas stepped back like she was contaminated. Don't touch me. His voice was barely a whisper, but it hit her like a scream. Please, Tiffany begged, falling to her knees in front of him. Please, Lucas, I don't know what happened. I think someone put something in my drink. I've never felt like that before. I couldn't control myself. That's convenient. Lucas's laugh was bitter, broken. Blame the alcohol. Blame some mystery substance. Anything except taking responsibility for what you did. I am taking responsibility. Tiffany looked up at him, mascara running down her face, her golden twists a mess around her shoulders. I'm telling you that I kissed him. I don't remember anything else, but I remember that, and I'm not going to lie to you about it. But Lucas, you have to believe me. Something was wrong. That wasn't me. I would never. But you did. Lucas's voice was hollow now. Empty. Like all the emotion had been drained out of him. You just admitted it. You kissed another man. Get in our home. In our bed. He turned away from her, his massive shoulders shaking. I was building us an empire, he said quietly. I was working 18-hour days, missing holidays, missing anniversaries, killing myself to give you everything you could ever want. And the whole time you were... I wasn't doing anything. Tiffany scrambled to her feet. Last night was the first time I ever met Rocco. Shantel introduced us at the gala. I don't even know him. Lucas went very still. Shantel introduced you? Yes, she said he was an old friend. She kept giving me champagne, and then I felt strange, and then... Tiffany's eyes widened as realization started to dawn. Lucas, what if Shantel... Don't. Lucas spun around, his dark eyes blazing. Don't you dare try to blame Shantel for this. He stopped abruptly, like he'd said too much. She what? Tiffany asked slowly. Lucas's jaw clenched. He'd promised Shantel he wouldn't reveal the source of the photos, wouldn't reveal who'd tipped him off. She was terrified Tiffany would hate her. Nothing, he said flatly. Get dressed. We need to talk about what happens next. What happens next? Tiffany grabbed his arm. Lucas, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake that I don't even fully remember making. But I love you. I've only ever loved you. We can work through this. We can go to therapy. I need time. Lucas pulled his arm away. I need to think. I can't even look at you right now without seeing... He couldn't finish the sentence. couldn't say the words, without seeing another man's hands on you, without imagining what else might have happened, without feeling like his heart was being ripped out of his chest. "I'll sleep in the guest room," Lucas said finally. "We'll talk when I'm ready." He walked out, leaving Tiffany standing there in her underwear, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, with no memory of how bad it had actually been. And that uncertainty, that horrible, gnawing uncertainty, was almost worse than knowing for sure. The next 6 months were a slow death. Lucas didn't file for divorce immediately. Tiffany clung to that hope like a drowning woman. He didn't throw her out, didn't cut off her credit cards, didn't publicly humiliate her. He just froze. He moved back home from the guest room after a few weeks, but he didn't touch her, didn't kiss her, didn't look at her with anything other than cold assessment, like he was constantly evaluating whether she was worth the pain. Tiffany did everything she could think of to repair the damage. She tried to initiate conversations about what happened. Lucas shut them down. She suggested couples therapy. Lucas said he'd think about it, then never brought it up again. She cooked his favorite meals, wore his favorite outfits, tried to remind him of who they used to be before everything fell apart. Lucas ate the meals in silence, looked at her outfits without comment, treated her like a roommate he was tolerating rather than a wife he loved. And through it all, Shantel was there. "You just need to give him time," Shantel would say, patting Tiffany's hand sympathetically. "He's processing. He'll come around eventually." "It's been 4 months, Shantel. He barely speaks to me. He won't let me explain." "What's to explain?" Chantel's voice was gentle but pointed. "You told him you kissed someone else. You said you couldn't control yourself. What else is there to say?" Tiffany fell silent, guilt churning in her stomach. Because she didn't have answers. She still couldn't fully remember that night. Still didn't understand how she'd gone from committed wife to unfaithful partner in the space of a few hours. Still couldn't shake the feeling that something about the whole situation was wrong. But without proof, without evidence, without memory, what could she do? "Maybe you should consider letting him go," Shantel suggested one evening, her voice soft with false sympathy. "He's not happy, Tiff. Anyone can see that. And you're miserable too. Maybe it would be kinder for both of you if you just—" "No." Tiffany cut her off. "I'm not giving up on my marriage. I made a mistake, a horrible mistake, but I'm not going to walk away from this without a fight." Shantel nodded slowly, her expression understanding. But behind her eyes, frustration simmered. 6 months. She'd expected Lucas to kick Tiffany out within weeks. Expected the divorce papers to be filed within the first month. Expected to be comforting a newly single Lucas by now. But he was holding on. Despite everything, despite the photos, despite Tiffany's own confession, he was holding on. Shantel needed to push harder. 6 months and 3 days after the gala, Tiffany made one final attempt to save her marriage. She waited until late evening when Lucas was in his study reviewing contracts. She dressed carefully, not seductively, just her. The Tiffany he'd fallen in love with. Simple sundress, minimal makeup. Her golden kinky twists loose around her shoulders. She knocked on the study door. "Come in." Lucas's voice was flat, distracted. Tiffany pushed open the door and found him exactly where she expected. Behind his massive desk, laptop open, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked tired. Older than his 33 years. Like the past 6 months had aged him a decade. "Can we talk?" Tiffany asked softly. Lucas glanced up, then back at his screen. "I'm in the middle of—" "Lucas, please." Something in her voice made him stop, made him really look at her for the first time in months. Tiffany moved closer, her heart pounding. "I know you're still angry. I know you're still hurt. And I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness when I can't even fully remember what I did wrong." She sat down in the chair across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. But I need you to know that whatever happened that night, it was a mistake. A terrible, inexplicable mistake that I will regret for the rest of my life. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. And I don't have feelings for Rocco. I don't even know him. Lucas was silent, his dark eyes unreadable behind his glasses. I love you, Tiffany continued, her voice cracking. I've loved you since the day we met. I loved you when you were broke and coding in that cramped apartment. I loved you when you worked 80-hour weeks and forgot our anniversary. I loved you when you were 7,000 miles away and barely called. Tears started streaming down her face, but she didn't stop. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but please, please, Lucas, don't throw away our love over one night. One terrible night that I can't even remember properly. I'm begging you, please forgive me. Please let us try again. Lucas sat very still for a long moment. Then, slowly, he removed his glasses and set them on the desk. When he looked at her, Tiffany saw something she hadn't seen in months. Pain. Real, raw, devastating pain. I want to forgive you, Lucas said quietly. You have no idea how much I want to forgive you. I want to believe it was just a mistake. Just one night. Just a momentary lapse in judgment. Hope flared in Tiffany's chest. But I can't. Lucas's voice hardened. Because it wasn't just one night. Tiffany's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Lucas opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a folder. He slid it across to her with trembling hands. 2 weeks after the gala, I received these from an anonymous sender, he said. I've been holding on to them, trying to find an explanation, trying to convince myself they were fake. Tiffany opened the folder, and her heart stopped. Screenshots. Dozens of screenshots. Text messages between her phone number and a number she didn't recognize. I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing. When can I see you again? My husband doesn't appreciate me, not like you do. Meet me at the Riverside Hotel, room 1502. I'll be waiting. I think I'm falling in love with you. The messages spanned weeks. Fed weeks before the gala. Weeks of an apparent affair that Tiffany had absolutely no memory of, because she'd never sent them. No. Tiffany's hands were shaking so badly the papers rattled. No, this isn't. I never sent these. Lucas, I never sent any of these. I don't even know this phone number. It's Rocco's number, Lucas said flatly. I had it traced. I don't care whose number it is. I never texted him. I never met him before that night. Someone... Tiffany stopped abruptly, her mind racing. Someone had been sending texts from her phone. Someone had been creating evidence of an affair that never happened. Someone had orchestrated this entire thing. And there was only one person who had access to her phone. Only one person besides Rocco who'd been with her that whole night. Shantel. Tiffany breathed. Oz, don't. Lucas's voice was sharp as a knife. Don't you dare try to blame her again. Shantel has been nothing but supportive through this entire nightmare. She's been setting me up. Tiffany leapt to her feet. Lucas, think about it. She introduced me to Rocco. She kept giving me champagne. She was the only one with access to my phone. She's the one who called you that night, right? She's the one who tried to warn me about you. Lucas stood up too, his voice rising for the first time in months. For weeks before the gala, she was telling me she was worried about you. Worried you seemed distant. Worried you'd been acting strange. I didn't listen because I trusted you. She was laying groundwork. Tiffany grabbed the folder, shaking it at him. These texts? I never sent them. Check my phone. Check. The messages were deleted from your phone. Shantel told me. She said you deleted them to cover your tracks. Of course she said that, because she's the one who sent them and deleted them. Tiffany was crying now, frustrated tears streaming down her face. Lucas, please. please just think about this logically. Why would I cheat on you? I love you. I've always loved you. I don't know why. Lucas's control finally shattered, and he slammed his hand on the desk hard enough to make everything jump. I don't know why you did it. I've been asking myself that question for 6 months, and I can't find an answer. Was I not enough for you? Was the money not enough? The penthouse? The life I was building for us? I never wanted the money, Tiffany shouted back. I never cared about the penthouse or the lifestyle or any of it. I just wanted you. I wanted my husband. I wanted the man who used to paint my toenails and quote poetry and look at me like I was his whole world. And I was working to give you the world. Lucas's voice cracked. I was killing myself to build something so big, so successful, that we could retire at 35 and spend the rest of our lives together. Every missed dinner, every canceled anniversary, every night I spent in Tokyo instead of with you. It was all a sacrifice for us. I didn't ask for that. Tiffany was sobbing now. I didn't need that. I needed you to be present. I needed you to see me. I was so lonely, Lucas. So desperately lonely. And yes, maybe that made me vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? Lucas's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. To him? To Rocco? Is that what you're saying? Like that my absence drove you into another man's arms? No, yes, I don't know. Tiffany pressed her hands to her temples, trying to think through the tears and the confusion. Something was wrong that night. Something was in my drink. I know it sounds crazy, but I've never felt like that before. And I kissed him. I remember that, but I don't think anything else happened. I think I was set up to make it look like… You think? Lucas laughed bitterly. You think you were set up? You think nothing else happened? But you don't know, do you? Because you conveniently can't remember. He moved closer to her, his tall frame looming, his dark eyes burning with pain. Do you have any idea what these past 6 months have been like for me? Lying awake every night, wondering if you're thinking about him? Looking at you and imagining his hands on your body? The thought of someone else touching you, kissing you. His voice broke completely. It makes me want to kill somebody, Tiffany. It makes me want to hurt something. And I can't make it stop. I can't stop seeing those photos. I can't stop reading those texts. I can't stop wondering what else you did that night and other nights before then that you can't remember. Tiffany reached for him, desperate to comfort him, to make him understand. Lucas, please. He stepped back, out of her reach. I loved you so much, he whispered. I loved you more than I've ever loved anything. I would have given you the world. I was trying to give you the world. I didn't want the world. Tiffany's voice was barely audible. I just wanted you. Then why wasn't I enough? The question hung in the air between them, unanswerable. Because Tiffany couldn't explain, couldn't remember, couldn't prove that she hadn't done what he thought she'd done. All she had was her word, and Lucas didn't believe her. If you can't trust me, if you can't at least believe I didn't send those messages, Tiffany said slowly, each word costing her something vital, then maybe this marriage was never going to work anyway. Lucas flinched like she'd slapped him. Maybe you're right, he said, his voice hollow. Maybe I was a fool for thinking someone like you would actually stay faithful to someone like me. Someone like me? Someone like you? Tiffany's temper flared through her tears. What is that supposed to mean? It means I always knew I wasn't good enough for you, Lucas exploded. I knew from the day we met that you were out of my league. You were beautiful and talented and warm, and everyone loved you. And I was just some broke kid from the East Side who was too stupid to realize he was being played. I never played you. I loved you. I still love you. Then prove it. Lucas grabbed her shoulders, his grip almost painful. Prove you didn't send those texts. Prove you didn't have an affair. Prove something, anything, because I am drowning here, Tiffany. I am drowning in doubt, and I need something to hold on to. I can't prove something I didn't do. Tiffany wrenched herself out of his grip. All I can do is tell you the truth and beg you to believe me. But you don't, do you? You've already decided I'm guilty. You decided it the moment Shantel called you. She backed away from him, her face streaked with tears. I can't live like this anymore. I can't spend the rest of my life paying for something I didn't do. If you don't trust me, if you can't even consider the possibility that I'm telling the truth, then there's nothing left to save. Tiffany, I'll be gone in the morning. She was at the door now, her hand on the knob. I'll send you divorce papers. You can have the penthouse, the money, all of it. I don't want anything except my freedom. Tiffany, wait. But she was already gone, the door slamming behind her with a finality that echoed through the penthouse. Tiffany didn't go to the bedroom. She went to Chantel's room instead. Shantel was there, of course, lying on the guest bed, scrolling through her phone, looking perfectly comfortable in what should have been a guest space. She looked up when Tiffany burst through the door. Tiff, what's wrong? I heard shouting. It was you. Tiffany's voice was deadly calm, which was somehow more terrifying than screaming. You did this. You set me up. Chantel's face arranged itself into an expression of confused innocence. What are you talking about? The texts, the photos, the anonymous tip to Lucas. It was all you. Tiffany moved closer, her hands shaking with rage. You put something in my drink that night. You made me kiss Rocco. You staged those photos and sent them to my husband. Tiffany, you're being paranoid. Am I? Tiffany grabbed Chantel's phone out of her hands. Then you won't mind if I look through this, right? See if there's anything interesting in your messages? Maybe some text to Rocco? Maybe some… Shantel snatched the phone back, her mask slipping for just a moment. Give me that. You can't just what, Shantel? Tiffany was screaming now, all the pain and rage of the past 6 months pouring out. Can't just catch you? Can't just prove what you did? You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed my life. And for what? For Lucas? You think he's going to want you after this? Chantel's face hardened, all pretense of innocence dropping away. He would have wanted me from the beginning, Shantel said, her voice low and vicious. If you hadn't stolen him. I didn't steal anyone. He chose me. Because you were there first. Because you walked in with your perfect smile and your perfect twists and your perfect little laugh, and he looked at you like you were the sun. Shantel was on her feet now, facing Tiffany with years of bottled rage. He was supposed to be mine. I saw him first. I talked to him first, and you just took him like you take everything. I didn't know you wanted him. You never know. You never notice. You just float through life having everything handed to you while I have to fight for scraps. Chantel's face twisted with ugly emotion. Well, not anymore. Lucas is going to see who you really are now. And when he does, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. Tiffany stared at her cousin, her sister, and saw a stranger. You're insane, she whispered. You're actually insane. I'm smart, Shantel corrected. I planned this for months, every detail, every piece of evidence. And you know what the best part is? You'll never be able to prove it. It's your word against mine, and Lucas already believes me. She smiled, and it was the coldest thing Tiffany had ever seen. Tiffany wanted to hit her, wanted to grab her by her perfect tapered hair and slam her head against the wall, wanted to hurt her the way she'd been hurt. Instead, she stepped back. You're going to regret this, Tiffany said quietly. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday the truth is going to come out. And when it does, I hope it destroys you. She turned and walked out, leaving Shantel standing there with her victory. The next morning, Tiffany left. She packed one small bag, just the essentials, nothing Lucas had ever bought her. She left her jewelry, her designer clothes, everything that reminded her of the life she was losing. She wrote him a letter. Lucas, I can't keep living in this prison, paying for a crime I didn't commit, begging for forgiveness for something that never happened the way you believe it did. You've already decided I'm guilty. Nothing I say will change that. So I'm setting you free. And I'm setting myself free. I've signed the divorce papers. They're on your desk. Ask yourself this. Who benefits from our destruction? Who's been whispering in your ear this whole time? Who's been making herself comfortable in our home while our marriage fell apart? I hope someday you'll see the truth. And I hope it doesn't destroy you when you do. I loved you. I still love you. Love. And I will always love you. But I can't stay here and watch you hate me anymore. Goodbye, Lucas. Tiffany. She left the letter on his pillow, left her keys on the counter, left her old life behind, and walked out of the Blackwater penthouse with nothing but a small bag and a shattered heart. 3 hours later, Lucas found the letter. He read it 3 times, his hands trembling. Ask yourself this. Who benefits from our destruction? Who's been making herself comfortable in our home? For just a moment, one terrible suspended moment, doubt crept in. Then Shantel appeared at the bedroom door, her face arranged in perfect sympathy. I heard Tiffany leave. I'm so sorry, Lucas. I know how hard this must be. She moved closer, sat beside him on the bed, placed a gentle hand on his arm. She actually tried to accuse me last night, Shantel said with a sad laugh. Said I was the one who set her up. Can you believe it? After everything I did to try to help her? Lucas looked at the letter, looked at Shantel. The words echoed in his head. Who benefits from our destruction? She's just deflecting, Shantel continued softly. Unable to take responsibility. It's classic behavior for someone who's been caught. She squeezed his arm, her dark eyes full of understanding. But I'm here for you. Whatever you need. Whenever you need it. Lucas stared at the letter for a long moment. Then slowly, he let it drop to the floor. You're right, he said, his voice empty. She made her choice. Shantel smiled, and if Lucas had been watching closely, he might have seen the triumph flash through her eyes before she hid it away. I'm so sorry you're going through this, she said, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. But I promise, I'll never abandon you like she did. He didn't see the way Shantel's hand smoothed over his back with possessive satisfaction. He didn't see the way she looked around the master bedroom with hungry eyes. He didn't see the monster hiding behind the mask of the supportive friend. All he saw was someone who'd been honest with him, someone who'd tried to warn him, someone who was there when his wife had abandoned him. And in his devastation, in his heartbreak, in his overwhelming need for comfort, he let Shantel in. Then Shantel had made sure to spread word about Tiffany's infidelity to anyone who cared to listen, completely destroying her reputation. In a small city where your business was everyone's business, many people had taken the news personal. The art gallery that displayed her work had refused to accept any more. The school she thought had fired her. She had nothing. But the truth was about to surface, and Chantel's actions was about to backfire in a very epic way. Back to present, Lucas sat in his study, the penthouse silent around him except for the hum of his laptop. It was past midnight, but sleep had been elusive since he'd encountered Tiffany at that diner 3 days ago. 3 days since she'd called him spectacularly stupid. 3 days since she'd shoved his money back into his pocket with fire in her eyes. 3 days since doubt had started eating him alive. His laptop screen glowed in the darkness, displaying the folder he hadn't opened in 3 years. The evidence folder. Photos, screenshots, not the investigator's report. Lucas had built a $6 billion empire on data analysis, on patterns, on seeing what others missed. And for the first time since that terrible night, he was looking at this evidence not as a heartbroken husband, but as an analyst searching for the truth. He pulled up the first photo. Tiffany in their bed, eyes closed, face slack. Rocco beside her, positioned intimately. But now that he was really looking, Something jumped out at him. Tiffany's face didn't look peaceful. It looked unconscious. Her makeup was smeared, yes, but not in the way of someone who'd been passionately engaged. More like someone who'd been crying. Or worse. And her hand, the one near Rocco's shoulder, it wasn't touching him. It was just there. Limp. Staged. Lucas zoomed in on the photo, his heart starting to pound. Art the timestamp. All the photos had been taken within a 5-minute window. Not over the course of a night. 5 minutes. Like someone had posed subjects and quickly snapped multiple angles. His hands were shaking now as he opened the screenshots of the text messages. Read through them with fresh eyes. I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing. The phrasing was wrong. Tiffany never texted like this. She used emojis, exclamation points, made typos she'd laugh about. These messages were flat, generic, professional, almost like they'd been written by someone who didn't actually know how Tiffany communicated. Lucas pulled up the metadata on the messages. All sent during times when Tiffany had been at her art classes or at the community center, times when her phone would have been in her bag, unattended. Times when someone with access to her phone could have sent them. Someone like Shantel. Ask yourself this: who benefits from our destruction? Tiffany's words from her goodbye letter, the letter he'd dismissed as deflection, echoed in his head. Lucas stood up abruptly and walked to the window, looking out over the Detroit skyline. Somewhere out there, Tiffany was probably at her second job. Exhausted, struggling, working herself to the bone, while Shantel was here, in his home, making herself comfortable, making herself indispensable. Almost like she'd been planning this all along. Lucas turned and looked at his penthouse with new eyes. Chantel's sweater on the couch, her shoes by the door, her perfume lingering in the air, her presence in every room. When had that happened? When had she gone from occasional visitor to permanent fixture? He pulled out his phone and scrolled to his calendar, going back 3 years, tracking Chantel's visits. She'd started coming by more frequently about 2 months before the gala. Keeping Tiffany company, she'd said. Making sure she's not too lonely. How convenient. Lucas sat back down at his laptop and did something he should have done 3 years ago. He started investigating. Really investigating. He pulled up the private investigator's report, the one that had provided all that damning evidence about Tiffany's affair. The investigator's name was Donald Hudson. Lucas typed the name into a search engine. Donald Hudson's private investigations had shut down 6 months after Lucas's case. No forwarding information. No explanation. The business had simply disappeared. Lucas dug deeper. Found his personal information. The man had moved to Florida shortly after closing his business. Bought a house. Cash. A house that cost significantly more than a private investigator should be able to afford. Almost like he'd been paid very well for one specific job. Lucas's stomach turned. He searched for the building security guard next. Thomas Morrison. The man who'd logged Rocco's supposed visits to the penthouse. Thomas Morrison had also moved shortly after the divorce. To Arizona. The pattern was becoming clear. Every single witness had either disappeared or come into sudden money shortly after providing testimony. Lucas grabbed his phone and called his current head of security, someone he trusted implicitly. "Mr. Blackwater?" James answered on the second ring, on sounding alert despite the late hour. "Is everything all right?" "I need you to pull building security footage from 3 years ago," Lucas said without preamble. "Specifically, I need footage from the service elevator and parking garage. October through December." "That's a lot of footage, sir. What am I looking for?" "Anything involving a man named Rocco Bellini and—" Lucas swallowed hard. "Anything involving Shantel DeLuca." Silence on the other end. Then, "Ms. DeLuca, sir, she's—" "I know what she is," Lucas interrupted. "Just get me the footage. All of it. I need it by morning." "Yes, sir." Lucas hung up and stared at his laptop screen. at the photos, at the texts. At 3 years of evidence he'd accepted without question because he'd been too hurt, too insecure, or too convinced he wasn't good enough for Tiffany to believe anything else. You were so eager to believe the worst of me. Tiffany had been right. He had been eager. Because deep down, he'd always believed she'd leave eventually. That someone like her, beautiful, talented, warm, would realize she could do better than some kid from the East Side who'd gotten lucky with a tech company. So when the evidence appeared, he'd latched onto it. Confirmation of his worst fears. Proof that he'd been right to be insecure. Except what if it wasn't proof? What if it was a carefully constructed lie designed to exploit his insecurities? Lucas pulled up his contacts and scrolled to a name he hadn't called in years. Ned Goodman, an old friend from college who'd become a forensic digital analyst. Lucas Blackwater, Ned answered, surprise evident in his voice. Man, I haven't heard from you in forever. What's up? I need a favor, Lucas said. I need you to analyze some photos and text message screenshots. Tell me if they've been manipulated. Sure, I can do that. What's this about? Lucas hesitated, then said simply, I think I made a mistake, a big one, and I need to know for sure. If Lucas is finally investigating and you're here for it, drop a comment saying, Find the truth, Lucas, and hit that subscribe button, because what he's about to discover is going to change everything. By 6 a.m., Lucas hadn't slept. He'd spent the entire night going through records, tracking payments, following digital trails, and every piece of evidence pointed to one inescapable conclusion. He'd been played. Systematically, methodically, brilliantly played. His phone buzzed. A text from James, his head of security. James, got the footage. You need to see this. I'm sending it to your secure email now. Lucas opened his email with trembling hands and downloaded the files. The first video was from the service elevator. Time stamped the night of the gala. The elevator doors opened, and there was Shantel, supporting a barely conscious Tiffany. And beside them, helping maneuver Tiffany's limp body, was Rocco. Lucas's blood ran cold as he watched them take Tiffany up to the penthouse. Watched Shantel swipe a keycard, Tiffany's keycard, which she must have taken from her purse. Watched them disappear into the elevator with his wife unconscious between them. The next video was from the parking garage, dated 2 weeks before the gala. Shantel, meeting with a man in a dark corner. And the man handed her something. Lucas couldn't see what. Money changed hands. The man's face was partially visible. Thomas Morrison, the security guard who'd logged Rocco's fake visits. Another video. Shantel meeting with Donald, the private investigator. More money changing hands. Lucas sat back in his chair, feeling physically sick. She'd planned everything, every detail, every piece of evidence. She'd paid off witnesses, staged photos, sent fake texts from Tiffany's phone, and orchestrated an entire conspiracy to destroy his marriage. And he'd believed it all. His phone buzzed again. An email from Ned. Lucas, finished analyzing those images and screenshots. Man, I don't know what you're involved in, but this is some sophisticated work. The photos show signs of digital manipulation. Not heavy. Just lighting adjustments and positioning that suggests staging. The metadata has been altered to hide gaps in the timeline. As for the text screenshots, they're real screenshots, but I can't verify whether the original messages actually came from the phone number claimed. Anyone with access to the phone could have sent messages to themselves, screenshot them, then deleted the conversations. It's a common tactic in fraud cases. Bottom line, none of this would hold up in court as genuine evidence of an affair. Too many red flags. Call me if you need anything else. Ned Lucas stared at the email, his chest tight. None of it was real. The affair, the betrayal, the evidence that had destroyed his marriage. None of it was real. Tiffany had been telling the truth all along, and he'd thrown her away without even properly investigating. Lucas stood up on shaking legs and walked to the master bedroom. Stood in the doorway looking at the bed where those photos had been taken. The bed where he'd imagined Tiffany with another man. The bed that had haunted his nightmares for 3 years. It had all been a lie. A elaborate, cruel, calculated lie. And he'd fallen for it because he'd been too insecure, too scared, too convinced he wasn't good enough to believe in the woman who'd loved him. "You're up early." Lucas spun around. Shantel stood in the hallway wearing one of his t-shirts and sleep shorts, her short, tapered hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She smiled at him warmly. "I was going to make breakfast," she said. Figured you'd want something before your 8 a.m. meeting." "Get out." Chantel's smile faltered. "What?" "Get out of my home." Lucas's voice was deadly quiet. "Now." "Lucas, what are you talking about? What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Lucas laughed, and it was an ugly sound. "What's wrong is that I spent the night going through security footage, watching you manipulate my wife, watching you stage those photos, watching you pay off witnesses." Chantel's face went very pale. "I don't know what you think you saw. I saw everything." Lucas pulled out his phone and held up the security footage. "You and Rocco taking an unconscious Tiffany up to this penthouse. You meeting with Thomas Morrison and paying him cash. You coordinating with Donald." He stepped closer to her, and Chantel actually backed up. "I had the photos analyzed," Lucas continued, his voice shaking with rage. "The text messages examined, the timeline investigated. And you know what I found? Evidence of fraud, manipulation, a conspiracy. Lucas, you destroyed my marriage." Lucas's voice rose to a roar. "You, Dr. Ugg, Jed my wife. You staged photos. You sent fake texts. You paid people to lie. And I believed you. I threw away the woman I loved because I believed your lies." Chantel's mask finally slipped. The warm, supportive friend disappeared, replaced by something cold and desperate. "She didn't deserve you," Chantel shouted back. "She didn't appreciate what she had. She was lonely and pathetic and always complaining about you. She was loyal. She was faithful. She loved me." "I love you." Chantel grabbed his arms, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his skin. "I've loved you since the day we met. I introduced you to Tiffany. Me. You were supposed to be mine, but you looked at her and you didn't even see me." She was crying now, ugly tears streaming down her face. "I've spent my entire life watching her take everything that should have been mine. Every achievement, every opportunity, every person who mattered, and I was done. I was done being invisible. I was done being second best." Lucas wrenched his arms out of her grip, looking at her with disgust. "So you destroyed an innocent woman's life because you were jealous?" "I gave you 3 years to see the truth." Chantel was screaming now, all composure gone. 3 years to realize that I'm the one who's been here. I'm the one who comforted you. I'm the one who took care of you, not her. Me." "You're insane," Lucas said quietly. "You're genuinely insane." "I'm in love." Chantel reached for him again, but Lucas stepped back. "Lucas, please. We can make this work. We can nothing." Lucas pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police. You're going to be arrested for fraud, conspiracy, and whatever else my lawyers can think of. And then I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did." Chantel's face crumpled. "You can't. Lucas, please, you can't." "Watch me." Lucas made the call, his eyes never leaving Chantel's face as he reported her crimes to the authorities. Chantel sank to the floor, sobbing, her perfectly constructed world crumbling around her. "She'll never forgive you," Chantel said through her tears. "Even if you tell her the truth. Even if you grovel. Tiffany will never forgive you for not believing her." Lucas felt that like a knife to the chest, because Chantel was probably right. But he had to try. 2 hours later, after the police had taken Chantel away in handcuffs, Lucas stood in his penthouse surrounded by the life he'd built. The expensive furniture, the original artwork, the floor-to-ceiling windows with million-dollar views. It all felt hollow, empty, meaningless. because the only thing that had ever mattered was gone, and it was his fault. Lucas grabbed his keys and headed for the door. He had to find Tiffany, had to tell her the truth, had to beg for forgiveness, even though he knew he didn't deserve it. He drove to Rosie's diner first, but the hostess told him Tiffany's shift didn't start until evening. "She's probably at her other job," the woman said with a sympathetic look. "The cleaning company. Elite Services, I think it's called. They do office buildings downtown." Lucas felt something break inside him. Tiffany, his Tiffany, who'd once had her art displayed in galleries, was cleaning office buildings. Because of him. Because he'd been too proud, too insecure, too stupid to believe in her. He found Elite Services' office and explained he needed to speak with Tiffany Campbell urgently. "She's on a job right now," the manager said. "The Riverside building on Jefferson. But she should be finishing up soon if you want to wait." Lucas was already out the door. The Riverside building. The same building Shantel had claimed Tiffany met Rocco at for their first affair. The irony wasn't lost on Lucas. He took the elevator up to the 15th floor, the floor Tiffany was supposedly afraid of because of her fear of heights, and found her in an empty office, wearing a cleaning company uniform, pushing a vacuum. She had earbuds in and didn't hear him approach. Lucas just stood there for a moment, watching her. Her golden, kinky twists were pulled back into a practical bun. Her face was free of makeup. Her hands, those hands that used to create beautiful art, were red and chapped from chemicals. She looked exhausted, worn down, but still beautiful. Still her. Lucas must have made a sound because Tiffany turned, saw him, and froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Tiffany yanked out her earbuds, her face hardening. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was cold. "Are you stalking me now?" "Tiffany, Lucas's voice cracked. I need to talk to you, please." "No." Tiffany turned back to her vacuum. "I don't have anything to say to you, and I'm working, so unless you want to get me fired, you need to leave." "You were right." Lucas's words stopped her. "About everything. You were right." Tiffany turned slowly, suspicion written all over her face. "Right about what?" "Shantel." Lucas swallowed hard. "She set you up, all of it. The photos, the texts, the witnesses. She orchestrated everything to destroy our marriage." Tiffany stared at him, her expression unreadable. "And you know this how?" Her voice was carefully neutral. "Did you finally decide to actually investigate after 3 years?" "I saw security footage," Lucas said. "From the night of the gala. Shantel and Rocco taking you up to the penthouse while you were unconscious. And I tracked down the witnesses. They were all paid off. I had the photos and texts analyzed. They were manipulated." He stepped closer, his hands shaking. "Tiffany, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. You were innocent. You were telling the truth. And I didn't believe you. I didn't trust you. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too insecure and too stupid to—" "Stop." Tiffany held up a hand. "Just stop." Lucas fell silent. Tiffany was looking at him with an expression he couldn't read. Not angry, exactly. Not sad. Something colder, more final. "You figured it out," she said quietly. 3 years later, you finally figured out what I was telling you from the beginning. Congratulations, Lucas. You're a real detective. Tiffany, do you have any idea what the last 3 years have been like for me?" Her voice was shaking now. "I lost everything. My home, my career, my reputation, my husband. I've been working 2 jobs just to afford an apartment with roaches. I've been so tired I could barely stand. And the whole time I knew I was innocent, but nobody believed me." Tears started streaming down her face. "Not my friends, not the lawyers, not even you, especially not you. The man who promised to love me for better or worse. The man who swore he'd always believe in me. You looked at some photos and some texts and decided I was guilty without even questioning it." I know, Lucas whispered. I know, and I hate myself for it. Tiffany, please. Please what? Tiffany's laugh was bitter. Please forgive you. Please take you back? Please pretend the last 3 years didn't happen? She moved closer to him, her dark eyes blazing. You want to know the worst part, Lucas? The absolute worst part. I spent 6 months begging you to believe me. 6 months of trying to prove something that should never have needed proof. And you just looked through me, like I was a stranger. Like 7 years of marriage meant nothing. It meant everything. Lucas was crying now too, tears streaming down his face. Tiffany, it meant everything to me. I was scared. I was insecure. You thought I wasn't good enough to stay faithful to you, Tiffany finished. You thought I'd leave you eventually, so you pushed me away first. You were so busy looking for betrayal that you couldn't see loyalty standing right in front of you. Lucas couldn't respond because she was absolutely right. I loved you, Tiffany whispered. I loved you so much it hurt. I loved you when you were broke. I loved you when you were successful. I loved you when you were never home and barely called and treated me like an afterthought. I loved you through everything. Her voice broke. But you didn't love me enough to trust me. I do love you, Lucas said desperately. I've never stopped loving you. Tiffany, please. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed us. But please, please give me a chance to make this right. Tiffany was silent for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then she shook her head. I can't, she whispered. I can't go through this again. Lucas, I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if you really trust me or if you're just waiting for the next piece of evidence to convince you I'm betraying you. I'll never doubt you again. Lucas swore. I swear to you, You said that before. Tiffany's voice was hollow. On our wedding day, you promised to trust me, to believe in me for better or worse. And the first time we hit worse, you broke that promise. She stepped back, putting distance between them. I'm glad you know the truth now, but that doesn't change what you did to me. That doesn't erase 3 years of suffering. That doesn't fix the fact that when I needed you most, you abandoned me. Tiffany, please. I need you to leave, Tiffany said firmly. I need to finish my shift, and then I need to go to my next job because that's my life now. And you need to go back to your penthouse and your empire and your life without me. I don't want a life without you, Lucas said brokenly. You should have thought of that 3 years ago. Tiffany turned back to her vacuum, and Lucas knew he was being dismissed. He stood there for a moment longer, memorizing her. The way her golden twists caught the light, the set of her shoulders, the profile of her face. Then he turned and walked away, his heart shattering with every step. Lucas didn't go back to his penthouse. He couldn't. The place felt contaminated now, tainted by Chantel's presence, by his own stupidity, by everything he'd lost. Instead, he went to his office and called his lawyer. I want to do 3 things, Lucas said. First, I want Shantel prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Fraud, conspiracy, whatever we can make stick. I want her in prison. Consider it done, his lawyer said. What else? Second, I want a public statement released, clearing Tiffany's name, explaining what really happened, making it clear she was innocent and I was a fool. That's going to be embarrassing for you, Lucas. Good. I deserve to be embarrassed. What's the third thing? Third, I want you to track down every dollar Tiffany should have gotten in the divorce. She didn't take anything, she just walked away. I want her to have what she's owed. The penthouse if she wants it. Half of everything. More than half. All of it if that's what it takes. His lawyer was silent for a moment. Lucas, if you give her everything, you'll be… I don't care, Lucas interrupted. I built that empire telling myself it was for us, for our future. Well, She deserves her share. She deserves everything she lost because of me. All right, I'll draw up the papers. Lucas hung up and stared out his office window at the Detroit skyline. He'd spent 3 years building an even bigger empire. More money, more success, more everything. And it had all been meaningless without her. His phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. James. Shantel is being charged with fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, drugging, and false testimony. The DA says with the evidence we provided, she's looking at serious prison time. Lucas should have felt satisfaction, vindication, justice. Instead, he just felt empty. Because Shantel going to prison didn't fix what he'd broken. Didn't bring Tiffany back. Didn't undo 3 years of pain. Shantel is finally getting what she deserves. If you're here for the justice, drop a comment saying karma came for Chantelle. But the real question is, can Lucas win Tiffany back? Or is it too late? Keep watching because this isn't over yet. The next morning, Lucas's public statement hit every major news outlet. Statement from Lucas Blackwater, CEO of Blackwater Technologies. 3 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I allowed myself to be deceived by false evidence and my own insecurities, leading to the destruction of my marriage to Tiffany Campbell. I now know with absolute certainty that my ex-wife was innocent of the infidelity I accused her of. She was the victim of an elaborate conspiracy designed to destroy our marriage. The person responsible has been arrested and will face prosecution. Tiffany Campbell is one of the most loyal, honest, and loving people I have ever known. She was faithful to me throughout our marriage, and I repaid that faithfulness with suspicion and abandonment. She deserved better than what I gave her. I am making this statement to publicly clear her name and to acknowledge that I was wrong. Spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. I allowed pride and insecurity to blind me to the truth, and an innocent woman suffered because of my failure. To Tiffany, I know this statement doesn't undo the pain I caused you. I know it doesn't give you back the 3 years you lost, but I hope it helps restore the reputation you never should have lost in the first place. I'm sorry. For everything. Lucas Blackwater. The statement went viral within hours. Lucas's phone exploded with calls from media outlets, business associates, old friends, and everyone wanted to know the full story. Lucas ignored them all. He only cared about one person's reaction, and Tiffany wasn't calling. 2 weeks passed. Lucas watched from afar as Tiffany's life slowly started to change. The public statement had done what he'd hoped. People who'd shunned her were now reaching out. The art gallery that had dropped her called to apologize and offered her a show. The community center where she used to teach invited her back. Lucas made sure she received the financial settlement she deserved. Half of everything from their marriage, plus compensation for the 3 years she'd struggled. His lawyers told him she'd initially refused it, but they'd insisted it wasn't a gift. It was what she was legally owed. Eventually, she'd accepted. Lucas hoped it meant she was moving on. Building a new life. Us getting back everything she'd lost, even if that new life didn't include him. 3 weeks after their confrontation at the Riverside building, Lucas was working late in his office when his assistant buzzed him. "Mr. Blackwater, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says..." "Send her in," a familiar voice said in the background. Lucas's heart stopped. The office door opened, and Tiffany walked in. She looked different than the last time he'd seen her. She was wearing nice clothes. Not designer, but nice. Her golden kinky twists were freshly done, cascading down her back. She had makeup on. Just a touch of eyeliner that made her dark eyes stand out. She looked rested. Healthy. Beautiful. She looked like she was healing. Lucas stood up slowly, afraid to move too fast and break whatever spell had brought her here. "Tiffany," he breathed. "Hi, Lucas." Her voice was calm, measured. Not warm, but not cold either. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. "I saw your statement. Tiffany said finally. And I got the settlement. You deserved it, all of it, more than that. I know. Tiffany moved closer, stopping a few feet away from his desk. I also heard about Shantel, that she's facing up to 15 years in prison. Good, Lucas said simply. She destroyed lives. She deserves to pay for it. Tiffany nodded slowly. I agree. Another silence. Why are you here, Tiffany? Lucas asked softly. Not that I'm complaining. I didn't think you'd want to see me again. Tiffany looked down at her hands, then back up at him. I've been thinking a lot over the past few weeks, she said. About what happened, about what you did, about what I want. Lucas waited, barely breathing. What you did was unforgivable, Tiffany continued. You didn't trust me. You didn't believe in me. You let your insecurities destroy something beautiful, and I have every right to hate you for that. Lucas nodded, his throat tight. But I don't hate you, Tiffany said quietly. I wanted to. God, I wanted to hate you so badly. It would make everything so much easier if I could just hate you and move on. She stepped closer. But the truth is, I still love you. I've always loved you. And that's the problem. Lucas's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. The problem is that loving you hurt me more than anything else in my life, Tiffany said, in her eyes filling with tears. Loving you and not being loved back, not being trusted, not being believed, nearly destroyed me. I did love you back, Lucas said desperately. I always loved you. You just loved your insecurities more, Tiffany finished. You loved your fear of not being enough more than you loved me. And that's what I can't forgive yet, Lucas. Not the mistake, not being deceived by Shantel, but the fact that you were so ready to believe I'd betray you, like you'd been waiting for it. Lucas wanted to deny it, but he couldn't, because she was right. I was, he admitted, his voice breaking. I was waiting for you to realize you could do better, that you deserved better. And when the evidence appeared, it just confirmed what I'd always feared. He moved around the desk, closer to her. But I was wrong. So wrong. You were perfect, loyal, faithful, everything I could have ever wanted. And I threw you away because I couldn't see my own worth. Tiffany was crying now, tears streaming down her face. When Shantel showed you those photos, when she told you those lies, I needed you to think, that doesn't sound like my wife. That doesn't sound like the woman who's loved me for 7 years. Let me investigate before I destroy her. I know, Lucas said brokenly. I know that's what I should have done. And I will regret not doing it for the rest of my life. They stood there, inches apart, both crying. I don't know if I can trust you again, Tiffany said finally. I don't know if I can open my heart to someone who broke it so completely. I understand, Lucas said. And I don't expect you to. I needed you to know that I know the truth now, that I believe you, that I'm sorry. I know you're sorry, Tiffany said. Your statement made that pretty clear, along with completely humiliating yourself in front of the entire world. Despite everything, Lucas felt his lips twitch slightly. You read it? Everyone read it, Lucas. It's been shared about 1,000,000 times. Tiffany wiped at her tears. People are calling you either the most honest man alive or the biggest idiot. Probably both, Lucas admitted. They stood in silence for another moment. Then Tiffany said something that made Lucas's breath catch. I'm not ready to forgive you yet, and I'm definitely not ready to get back together. Lucas's heart sank, but he nodded. I understand. But, Tiffany continued, maybe we could start over, not as husband and wife, not even as friends, just as two people getting to know each other again. Hope flared in Lucas's chest. What does that mean? It means maybe we could have coffee sometime, Tiffany said slowly. maybe we could talk, actually talk about everything, about what went wrong, about your insecurities, about how we both contributed to the distance in our marriage. She stepped closer, her dark eyes searching his face. It means I'm willing to consider the possibility that people can change, that you can learn to trust me, that I can learn to trust you again. But it's going to take time, Lucas. A lot of time. I have time, Lucas said immediately. All the time in the world. Tiffany, I'll wait as long as it takes. I'll prove to you every single day that I've changed, that I believe in you, that I trust you. Don't make promises you can't keep, Tiffany warned. I'm not. Lucas reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand, her rough, chapped hand that spoke of 3 years of hard work. I'm making a promise I will keep, even if it takes the rest of my life. Tiffany looked down at their joined hands, then back up at him. Coffee, she said firmly. That's all I'm agreeing to right now. Coffee and conversation. Coffee and conversation is perfect, Lucas said, and meant it. Because it was more than he deserved. More than he'd hoped for. A chance. A possibility. A tiny sliver of hope that maybe someday he could earn back what he'd lost. Saturday morning? Tiffany suggested. There's a coffee shop in Midtown, the same one where we first met. Lucas's throat tightened with emotion. I remember it. 10 a.m.? 10 a.m., Tiffany confirmed. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Don't be late. I won't be. Lucas would rather die than be late. Tiffany turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Lucas? Yeah? She looked back at him, and for the first time in 3 years, there was something soft in her eyes. Something that looked almost like hope. I'm glad you finally figured out the truth, even if it took you 3 years. Then she was gone, leaving Lucas standing in his office with tears on his face and hope in his heart for the first time since he'd destroyed everything that mattered. Saturday morning, Lucas arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early. He sat at the same table where they'd first met 7 years ago, where he'd been coding and she'd been grading art portfolios, where they'd started talking and hadn't stopped for hours, where everything began. At exactly 10 a.m., Tiffany walked through the door. She was wearing jeans and a simple top, her golden kinky twists loose around her shoulders. No makeup except a touch of lip gloss. She looked beautiful and real and so much like the woman he'd fallen in love with that Lucas's chest ached. Hi, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Hi, Lucas replied. They ordered coffee, both black like always, and for a moment just looked at each other. This is weird, Tiffany said finally. Extremely weird, Lucas agreed. They both smiled slightly, and some of the tension eased. So, Tiffany said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Tell me about the last 3 years. So Lucas told her. He told her about the loneliness, the regret, but the nights he couldn't sleep because he kept seeing her face, the way he'd thrown himself into work to avoid feeling anything, the hollow victory of becoming even more successful when success meant nothing without her. He told her about Shantel, how she'd slowly inserted herself into his life, how he'd been too grief-stricken to notice, how she'd almost convinced him to date her before he'd seen Tiffany at the diner and everything had started unraveling. And he told her about his insecurities, the ones he'd never fully addressed, the fear of not being good enough, the certainty that someone like Tiffany would eventually leave someone like him. I grew up poor, Lucas said quietly. Really poor. And I know I've been successful, but some part of me still feels like that kid who got laughed at for his shoes with holes, who wasn't good enough for the nice neighborhood or the good schools or the pretty girls. He looked at her with raw honesty. You were always out of my league, Tiffany, always, and I knew it. So when Shantel showed me that evidence, it just confirmed what I'd always believed deep down, that you'd realize you could do better. Tiffany was quiet for a long moment. "You know what I saw when I met you?" she said finally. "I saw a man who was beautiful, brilliant, and passionate and kind. A man who was working his butt off to build something meaningful. A man who made me laugh and challenged my thinking and looked at my art like it was precious." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I never cared about where you came from, Lucas. I cared about who you were. And somewhere along the way, yet you forgot that." "I know," Lucas said, squeezing her hand. "And I'm working on it. I've been seeing a therapist, dealing with my insecurities, my fear of abandonment, all of it." "Good," Tiffany said. "Because if we're going to even consider trying again, and I mean if, you need to do the work. You need to figure out why you were so ready to believe the worst of me." "I will," Lucas promised. "I am." They talked for 3 hours. About the marriage. About what went wrong. About Lucas's absence and Tiffany's loneliness and how they'd stopped communicating somewhere along the way. "I should have told you how lonely I was," Tiffany admitted. "Instead of just waiting for you to notice. I should have demanded you make time for me instead of just accepting the scraps you gave me." "And I should have been present," Lucas said. "Not just physically, but emotionally. I was so focused on building an empire to make you happy that I forgot what actually made you happy was just being with me." More coffee, more conversation, more honesty than they'd had in years. When the coffee shop closed at 2 p.m., they moved to a park nearby and kept talking. By the time the sun started setting, Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace. Not happiness exactly. Not yet. But peace. The kind that came from honesty. From being seen. From starting to rebuild something that had been broken. "I should go," Tiffany said finally, as the streetlights started coming on. "I have work tomorrow." "Can I see you again?" Lucas asked. "Same time next week?" Tiffany considered it. "Maybe. Let me think about it." She stood up, and Lucas stood too. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Tiffany did something that made Lucas's heart stop. She stepped forward and hugged him. It wasn't a romantic hug. It was brief, careful. But it was contact, connection. The first time they'd touched with anything other than anger in 3 years. "Thank you for being honest today," she said softly, "and for not trying to rush me." "I meant what I said," Lucas replied. "I'll wait as long as it takes." Tiffany pulled back and smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "We'll see." Then she walked away, and Lucas watched until she disappeared around the corner. He pulled out his phone and texted her. "Lucas, thank you for giving me a chance, even a small one. It means everything." A moment later, his phone buzzed. "Tiffany, don't screw it up this time." Lucas smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Lucas and Tiffany just had their first honest conversation in 3 years. If you're rooting for them to find their way back to each other, drop a comment saying, "Give love a second chance," and hit that subscribe button. We're not done yet. Keep watching. 6 months later, Lucas stood outside the art gallery, his hands sweating despite the cool Detroit evening. Tonight was Tiffany's first major show since the divorce. Her first time displaying her work publicly since her reputation had been destroyed and then restored. And she'd invited him. Actually invited him. With a physical invitation that arrived at his office with a handwritten note. "Lucas, this show is about reclaiming who I was before everything fell apart. I'd like you to be there, if you want to come. Tiffany." They'd been having coffee every Saturday for 6 months now. Sometimes just coffee. Sometimes coffee and walks through the city. Once, they'd gone to a museum and talked about art and code and how they were both forms of creating something from nothing. It was slow, careful, like two people learning to trust each other again. They hadn't kissed, hadn't held hands beyond brief moments of comfort. hadn't talked about getting back together. But they were building something, a foundation, the kind that couldn't be shaken by lies or insecurity or distance. Lucas took a deep breath and walked into the gallery. It was packed. Detroit's art scene had turned out in force to support Tiffany's comeback. Yet there were champagne and hors d'oeuvres and people examining her paintings with genuine appreciation. And there, in the center of it all, was Tiffany. She was wearing a stunning dress, deep blue that made her dark skin glow, her golden kinky twists styled in an elegant updo. She was talking to a potential buyer, animated and passionate about her work. She looked happy, confident, like herself again. Lucas watched from the edge of the crowd, content just to see her thriving. Then Tiffany looked up, saw him, and smiled. Not the careful smile she gave him at coffee. A real smile. The kind that made her eyes light up. She excused herself from the buyer and made her way over to him. "You came," she said. "You invited me," Lucas replied. "I wouldn't miss this for anything." Tiffany gestured around the gallery. "So, what do you think?" "I think you're amazing," Lucas said honestly. "Your work has always been beautiful, but this is something else. You can see the pain in it, but also the strength, the survival." He looked at her. "You took everything terrible that happened and turned it into art. That's incredible, Tiffany." She looked down, but she was smiling. "I had a lot of feelings to work through. Painting helped. I'm glad." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching people admire her work. "I sold 3 pieces already," Tiffany said, "and the night's not even half over." "That's amazing." "Yeah." Tiffany turned to look at him fully. "Lucas, there's something I want to ask you." "Anything." "After the show, would you want to get dinner with me? Not coffee, actual dinner." Lucas's heart started pounding. Like a date?" "Maybe," Tiffany said carefully. "Or maybe just 2 people who used to be married having a meal together. I haven't decided yet." Despite the careful wording, Lucas felt hope surge in his chest. "I would love to have dinner with you," he said. "Date or not?" Tiffany smiled. "Good. There's a new restaurant on Woodward I've been wanting to try. Meet me there at 9? "I'll be there." Tiffany touched his arm briefly, then went back to her buyers, leaving Lucas standing there with his heart full. Dinner was at a small Italian place with dim lighting and soft music. They talked about her art show, about his latest tech project, about everything and nothing. And at the end of the meal, when the waiter brought the check, Tiffany reached for it. "I got this," she said. "Tiffany, you don't have to, I want to." She looked at him seriously. "For the past 6 months, you've been paying for all our coffee, letting me set the pace, being patient. Let me do this." Lucas nodded, understanding. This was about equality, about her not needing him to take care of her financially, about rebuilding their relationship on new terms. They walked out into the cool night air, neither of them ready to say goodbye yet. "Want to walk?" Tiffany suggested. They walked along the Detroit River, the city lights reflecting off the water in comfortable silence. "I've been thinking," Tiffany said eventually. "About what?" "About forgiveness." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "About whether I can forgive you, whether I want to try again." Lucas's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. And?" he managed to ask. "And I think," Tiffany took a deep breath, "I think I'm ready to try, not rush into anything, not go back to how we were before, but maybe move forward, together, as a couple." Lucas felt like he couldn't breathe. "Are you sure?" "Tiffany, I don't want to pressure you." "You're not." Tiffany stepped closer. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Again. Because despite everything, despite all the pain and the betrayal and the 3 years apart, I still love you. And I think you've done the work to deserve a second chance." "I have," Lucas said fervently. I swear to you, I have. I'm still seeing my therapist. I'm still working on my insecurities. And I will never, never doubt you again. I believe you, Tiffany said softly. And that's why I'm willing to try. She reached up and touched his face, felt her hand gentle against his cheek. But we're doing this differently this time. No more you working 80-hour weeks. No more me suffering in silence when I'm lonely. We communicate. We prioritize each other. We build something healthy. Yes? Lucas agreed immediately. Whatever you want, whatever you need. I'm here, I'm present, I'm yours. Tiffany smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. Good, because I'm yours too. I always have been. Then she kissed him. It was soft, sweet, tentative at first, like they were learning each other again. Then deeper, more certain, as 3 years of longing and pain and love poured into that single moment of connection. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. I missed you so much, Lucas whispered, his forehead resting against hers. I missed you too, Tiffany replied, each and every single day. They stood there by the river, holding each other, and Lucas felt like he could finally breathe again. We're going to do this right this time, he promised. I'm going to love you the way you deserve. Trust you. Believe in you. Be the husband you needed me to be. And I'm going to be honest about what I need, Tiffany said. And we're going to work through our issues instead of letting them fester. Deal. They kissed again, softer this time. A promise. A beginning. A second chance neither of them were going to waste. 1 year later, Lucas woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee brewing. He smiled and stretched, then got up and followed the smell to the kitchen. Tiffany was there, wearing one of his t-shirts and dancing to music only she could hear while making breakfast. Her golden kinky twists were in a messy bun, and she was singing off-key to some song on her phone. Lucas leaned against the doorway, just watching her. This was what he'd almost lost. This moment of simple, perfect happiness. Tiffany turned and saw him, her face lighting up. Morning, sleepyhead. I made coffee. I can see that. Lucas moved into the kitchen and wrapped his arms around her from behind, kissing her neck. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Too excited about the gallery opening next week. Tiffany turned in his arms to face him. Plus, I wanted to make you breakfast. We have that meeting with the investors at 10, right? We do. Lucas had cut his work hours in half, delegated more, and made Tiffany his priority. But that's not until 10. We have time. Time for what? Tiffany asked with a playful smile. Oh, time for this. He kissed her, slow and deep, until she melted against him. They'd remarried 6 months ago. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. No Shantel, who was currently serving a 12-year sentence for fraud, conspiracy, and a list of other charges. And they'd bought a new place together. Not the old penthouse, too many bad memories. A house in Indian Village with a studio for Tiffany's art and an office for Lucas's work. A home they'd built together from scratch. I love you, Lucas said against her lips. I love you too, Tiffany replied, even though you're interrupting my cooking. Worth it. They stood in their kitchen, holding each other, exactly where they were supposed to be. It hadn't been easy getting here. They'd gone to couples therapy, had difficult conversations, now worked through layers of hurt and betrayal and insecurity. But they'd done it together, and that made all the difference. Lucas and Tiffany found their way back to each other. If this story taught you that trust is everything in a relationship, that the truth always comes out, and that real love can survive even the worst betrayals, drop a comment with a heart. And if you believe in second chances, comment, love wins. Thank you for being part of Lucas and Tiffany's journey. Subscribe to our channel for more stories, and join our membership community for exclusive videos and early access to new stories. We'll see you in the next one.